get it. MILF Manor. This is a Trojan horse. Why do I say that? Because it seems on the surface that TLC is supporting, intergenerational relationships, older women, younger men, older women, older men, younger women. It seems like that's what the purpose of this show is. But in reality, when you really do the code cracking on the whole sequence of events, what happens is you realize that TLC is actually supporting, infiltrating, deconstructing, and then they're destroying and corrupting the very thing that they supposedly support and they put on display. Now, what would be an example of how TLC does this? For instance, TLC has a show called Sister Wives. Now, on Sister Wives, it's been on for 17 seasons, where we follow the Brown family who is engaged in a polygamous relationship. There's 4 wives, there's 1 guy, there's 18 children between all of them. And during the course of that time, we watch Cody Brown destroy 3 of the 4 marriages that he had, and now he's left with 1 wife, and in the next season or next 2 seasons, that wife will probably leave him. Then you have 90 Day Fiance, which is also sponsored by TLC. On 90 Day Fiance, we follow the immigration process of people who go on vacation, basically, find somebody after a week of being wherever they are, fall in love, then come back and start to apply to marry that person. Then, lo and behold, each one of the people, or majority of the people that get married into these situations, all seem to want only one thing, which is citizenship and not the love that they profess. So by supporting them, they're actually showing them in the worst possible light by pulling up the worst possible examples. And this just isn't with TLC. You also have, under the Bravo umbrella, the Real Housewives or wherever, where you basically have women who are demonstrating the lifestyles of the rich and famous, which is an old TV show where these women show you the glamorous, beautiful lives where they go out and spend a ton of money and they have these excellent relationships and marriages that are so wonderful. But in reality, the show actually turns more into the Chronicles of the Broken Dusty. On the first season that they're on, they'll go out and buy $15,000 handbags like it's going out of style, spend $200,000 on a dress. Then by the next season, their husband is standing in a house that they used to live in, dudes wearing flip-flops. Like, that's just kind of the orientation of the show. So it's not the best example of what it is we're talking about. And when we come to MILF Manor, the description's in the name. This isn't Cougar Castle. This is Mothers I'd Like to Front Hug Manor, where you have women who are basically old head young girls or old women who are trying to act as though they're young girls. And it takes away from the beauty and the majesty of having that intergenerational relationship. If an older guy wants to date a younger woman, he doesn't do himself any service or any benefit by trying to portray himself as a 20-year-old or as the hip dad or the cool dad. Because the very thing that makes you valuable in that, arena would be the fact that you have bringing maturity, wisdom, age, knowledge to the relationship. Not that you can act just as young and immature as their peers and the guys that are their age. Why would they go out with a guy or a girl who is older or more advanced and you're still walking around in a 40, 50-year-old body, but you're acting like you're 25? Why not just get a 25-year-old if you're going to go for all that? So it doesn't make sense. And this is where it kind of runs into the rapids of destruction and dissimulation as far as this whole process is concerned. Now, for those of you who are going to turn around and say to me, James, well, men do the same things. No, we don't. No, we don't. This show only exists one way. This show could only work one way and be permissible to the general audience. Because if it was a show, imagine we're talking about Panther Palace, that's what Manther, I think that's what they call old men who go after younger women. Usually just call them creepy dudes. So, no, it doesn't go both ways, but let's pretend it does. Okay, you have a bunch of guys who are in this house, and they're sitting around having locker room talk, because that was the first episode. All the women got together, had a little locker room talk about how they like to tear these young people up, and they want these tenderonis, and they go, ooh, I'm going to get one, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to sleep with everybody here, and I'm going to use them, and oh, it's going to be so great and so wonderful. Imagine a bunch of guys sitting around talking like that, only to have later they see silhouettes of all these buxom women, and they get excited. Yeah, pull it back. And they pull back the curtain, and their daughter is standing there. That show is over. Those guys are going to walk away, because nobody is going to look at that show and accept the fact that this father is putting his desire to sleep with younger women over his daughter. If he's putting desire over his call to be a dad, then he's a crappy parent. Like, point blank. Nobody's going to celebrate and herald him for his sexual liberation, because he's so worried about trying to get to young girls that he's willing and allowing his daughter to be used in the same manner. I think that a more interesting take on this particular concept or show would be to show the inherent hypocrisy which underlies a lot of this decision making. If you're a parent, would you be okay with this? You know what you were there for. You know why you're there. And you know why these other guys are there. They're not looking for love. They're looking for fun and activities. So are you okay with trading with your daughter participating in it? And it asks a real question. And I think that that would be an interesting question to ask. But we're not going to ask that question. Because one of the things that I noticed, especially for people who get all in an uproar and want to talk about sameness and what if it was the other way, what you have to understand is misogyny has two heads when it comes to women. It has two focuses. One focus, they like the women to be pure, innocent, virgins and wholesome and all that good stuff. You can tell how many times they've had relations by how many children they have. They have 4 kids. They've only been with 4 people, or had the relations 4 times, and it's only been with one person, their husband. Then on the other end of that spectrum, you basically have guys who are looking at women as though they're sentient sex toys. They're just walking around and they're only good for one thing. And this is part of the problem when we allow human interaction when it comes to sexuality to be stripped of all emotion, because once it becomes an activity, and that activity is no different than riding a bicycle, going to the movies, watching TV, or whatever the case may be, and it's all the same thing, and at the same time you have guys who are saying that women are only good for that one thing. Well, if that one thing isn't worth anything, guess what? You're not worth anything, and that's part of the problem. That's part of the infiltration, pretending to support, infiltrating, denigrating, and then destroying. That's part of what happens. And that's part of what TLC is participating in. Because the stories that they're highlighting aren't the stories of the women who are a little more mild-mannered and they're trying to communicate and talk to the guys and get to know the guys. What they're showing on the show is a bunch of sex-crazed women who are so fixated on this one activity that they're putting everything else aside. You had one young lady invite a guy up to her room on the first night to try to engage in front hugs with him, and her son was sleeping in the bed right over, in the same room. So where's the dignity in that? You know, you're so worried about getting it in that you don't care what effect this has on your child. They have another young man who found out that his mom had slept with his friends on the show in front of everybody. This kid, when he found out, it was all a game and it was all a joke and it was supposed to be something that would make her more attractive to all the guys, to let the guys know how free and liberated she is. But what it did was it destroyed her son. Because you can see from his reaction, this young man found out about it. He's standing there ready to bust out in tears, crying because he's been betrayed by his mom because she slept with one of his friends. But then at the same time, which one of his friends did she sleep with? Which one of the guys who he calls a buddy and he's close to and sits there and smiles in his face was, going at his mom and betrayed him in that way? He went outside to the pool, took off all his clothes, got in the pool, just walked right into the pool, and was just in the water, in the deep end. Like this, you need to get this kid's shoelaces and belt. If not, you're going to be cutting him down in the morning. There is a problem like that. You think that there's no repercussions to it, and that's part of what's being sold, is that when you have these kind of relations, it doesn't mean anything, and there's no repercussions. There's no fallout. There is fallout. There is repercussions. There's nothing that you can do where there aren't consequences to your actions. Now, some consequences you can handle, some consequences or whatever it is, whatever, but there are some deep consequences that go far and are far-reaching beyond just you having a good time and having fun. Now, I'm not the prude. By no means am I a prude, and by no means am I going to sit here and pretend like I'm okay with everything and I'm not okay with stuff and people can't do what they want to do. They're all adults. If they all decided that they wanted to jump in the room together and do their thing, they could have at it. But at the same time, let's not sit here and try to normalize this and pretend that this is normal. There is a point where we have to start stepping back and asking those questions. If you are that sex crazed and you're so busy chasing after that one thing, then you will never find happiness, because at the end of the day, physicality, as great and as wonderful as it is and as high as it shoots your dopamine and as pleasurable as it can be, the truth of the matter is that it's very short-lived. And as you're going from person to person to person to person and you're trying to find this, then it becomes harder for you to be able to connect with people. And that's just the reality of it. You become good at the things that you practice. You're good at the stuff that you do all the time. If you're a person and you just run around and do whatever you're going to do with all kinds of different people, God bless you. You do your thing, knock yourself out, have a good time with it. But understand that when it comes time for you to find a person that you want to be with, it'll be harder for you to connect with that person in a substantial, meaningful way. Ultimately, my thing is this: be honest with yourself. Be honest with the things that you want. If you want to have a relationship, engaging in a whole bunch of wild, crazy front hug activity is not going to put you on the path to get a long-term functioning relationship. It's just not. If you want to have a lot of fun and you want to have a lot of physical fun, then be honest with yourself. And if you can do that, then have at it. But just recognize what path you're taking and what decisions you're making, and be willing to accept the consequences of your decisions. And from there, you make the best choices you can. That's my take. I'm James. This has been my take on reality, and I'm out. 'Cause I've been living life right like